All right. A very good evening to all of you. Welcome to our webinar this evening. I'd like to introduce myself before we go into our topic today. Very interesting. My name is Saloshini Naidoo, and just to give you a little bit of a brief background of who I am and where I come from, I've got lots and lots, like over 22 years of supply chain experience. I've had the privilege to work for some very big global organizations, as well as in a consulting space, FMCG, pharmaceutical, the packaging, the whole bang lot. So from a supply chain point of view, my experience comes from a quality, technical, procurement, planning, all of those areas in the supply chain. So guys, tonight I'm going to take you through the different areas of supply chain. I want to portray how exciting supply chain is and the different avenues that you can tap into and what it means for you as an individual, what it means for a business. And at the end, we're going to have a little bit of questions that you might have for me. So while I'm sharing my screen, if I can ask you to please start taking some notes or questions rather that you're going to ask me at the end, just so that you can get as much information as you can out of it. Okay, let me just do that. There we go. Everybody can see my screen and you can all hear me fine. Yep. Awesome. All right. So we're going to look at unlocking business success and how we navigate through the dynamics of supply chain management. So being in supply chain in this day and age is fantastic. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of things that are happening. The fact that we no more sitting in our little pond, in our little space, in our little country, we are now globalized and we can do business across the whole world. So I want to take you through tonight a little bit about what supply chain is, what the management of it is, and how dynamic and robust this area is. Okay. In terms of agenda, I just want to move me. Sorry, guys. There we go. In terms of agenda, we're going to look at what is supply chain management and why it's important to every business. Then I'm going to take you through some of the current and the future trends, everything that's happening and everything that has happened in the last couple of years. We'll cover the opportunities and challenges, and then very, very important, how you can change the world in supply chain and the management of it. And then right at the end, we'll have a little bit of a Q&A, ask your questions. So make whatever notes you need to, and let's take the questions from there. Guys, I'm gonna just apologize up front. I'm in load shedding, so I'm working off one screen. I'm not really able to see your chats on the screen. So maybe at the end of it, we can take questions then, if that's okay. All right, let's go. What is supply chain management? In order to answer that, we need to understand what is supply chain. And the second part of this is I'm going to explain to you why it's important to every business. Now, if I had to ask anybody what is supply chain, we're going to say producing, manufacturing. We're going to say it keeps the business going. It's where the money is made. It's where the production is done. Procurement gets involved. There's planning in there. All of these aspects, logistics, is absolutely true. That's what makes up supply chain. I want to give you a little bit of history, 2 seconds worth of history of what supply chain was and what it is now and exactly where it is we're going to go to going forward. Okay. Now, back in the day, there was no supply chain. We had production and we had all the other departments that fed into production, and we all just worked in silos. And maybe a good couple of, maybe a decade or two ago, we brought into supply chain quality, we brought in planning and production, and we stopped there. And now this is why it's so exciting, is because in the last couple of years, we brought in all of logistics into supply chain. And logistics is made up of distribution and warehousing. So now what we have is end to end, everybody's sitting in this whole place, and we've got this whole flow of business, and it's all happening within the supply chain. This is what makes it so exciting. Okay. So if you look at my screen, you're going to see there's a couple of definitions of what is supply chain management. You can go look it up, you can Google it. But if I had to just break that down, I will break it down into 3 different flows. So it's a physical flow of material, raw materials, coming from the supplier, going into our factory to be produced. It gets stored in all of these places, and then it goes to the customer. You and I go into the store and we buy. If you look at so that's your physical flow. Then you've got a systematic flow where everything that we do physically, all of the movement of the materials through the different areas has to be mimicked systematically. So your system needs to tell you what's happening physically as well. And then the third part of the flow is your monetary flow or your financial flow. So every step of the way, you've got money moving, you're spending money, and the customer pays you, and you are receiving money so that you can continue to spend money. So those are the 3 flows: information flow, a physical flow, and a financial flow that happens. But that's not all that happens in supply chain. You've also got to now manage equipment. You've got to manage people. You've got to manage space, and you've got to manage time. And all of this is done so that we can add value to our customer at the lowest cost possible. So this is, in a nutshell, what supply chain management is. Now, right here, the last point I have here is it begins and it ends with the customer. So a lot of us are thinking, okay, wait a minute, but it starts here with the supplier. Actually, it starts with the customer. Because if we are producing chocolate in this factory, how would we know how much to produce? How would we know when to produce it? The customer places orders, and based on those orders, we look at what we need to buy, purchase, procure, so that we can make and deliver to the customer. So it does start with the customer, and it does end with the customer. Okay? Let's move on. So inside of every single business, any business that you have, you've got 3 levels. You've got a topmost strategic level. And in your strategic level is where all your business executives sit. It's very comprehensive. It's very high level. So these guys come together. This is your ExCo, your leadership team. And they look at, where do I want my business to be in the next 3 to 5 years? And why do I want it to be there? Okay. So they might have a business strategic plan that says something like, in the next 3 years, we want to gain market share by 40%. We want to increase profit share by 25%. We want to get our quality levels up to 99%. We want safety standards, whatever it is. So what you're finding is that they've got a long-term goal. It's quite high level. And here's the thing about the strategic guys in supply chain. They are not really looking at how we're going to do it. At a strategic level, you're saying, this is what I want, this is when I want it by, and this is why I want it by. So I want to grow my market share and profit share. I want it to happen at that percentage in the next 3 years. And I want it because I want to be market leader. That's us as a business. Now, the tactical guys here in the middle, they need to take that strategic plan and they need to translate it into, okay, 40% growth. Where are we going to do this? We don't have capacity where we are. We don't have enough equipment. We don't have enough resources. How are we going to do this? Do we outsource? Do we keep it in? Do we buy more? Do you see? So they look at it from this point. It's more medium. And once the plan or the vision gets translated and it comes down here at an operational level, these guys are the doers. This is about, how do I get this done? How do I feed in every single day, for every single week, for every single month, for all 12 months for the year 2 and year 3, to hit the targets that these guys wanted up here. And the reason I'm saying this is because supply chain is a business partner. They are partners to the business. So it's not just about doing anymore. It's not just about how we're going to do it anymore. It's about why we're doing it, when we're doing it, and what is it that we need to do. You become a business partner. Everything that is got to do with the operations of the business is sitting here. Okay. All right. Now let's look at the flow. This is the exciting bit. So here you can see there's a number of different functions that make up supply chain and the way that it flows. I said it starts with the customer. So let's start here. Your customer decides that, so I'm going to give you a business. We are making skateboards, okay? We've got 3 customers. Customer A that wants 100 skateboards, customer B wants 100, and customer C wants 200 skateboards. That's the order. Now, when that sales order comes in, the planning department takes that sales forecast and they deploy it or translate it into a demand plan. And the demand plan is saying, in order to make 1 skateboard, I need a piece of wood, I need 4 wheels, and I need 8 screws. Okay. So planning then says, for customer A, we're going to need 100 boards, 400 wheels, and 800 screws. And customer B and customer C. So that's planning's job. Now procurement comes in because they need to go and get all of this material. So when procurement comes in, they look to see what stock do we have inventory. Okay, we don't have enough, we need to buy. But here's the thing, we can't just buy for now. We can't just buy only for customer A because a lot of it, the wheels are coming from China. So we need to look long term and we look across the board and say, for all 3 customers, how many boards do we need? How many wheels do we need? And so forth. We leverage off that volume and we buy accordingly. The goods start to get received. Inventory receives it. They bring it into their warehouse. Now here comes some of the issues. And I want to bring up these challenges as we're going through it, although I've got a slide on challenges, right? Inventory is then saying, dear procurement, that's a lot of wheels. I don't have space. So procurement then needs to go back to say to the supplier, can you hold stock for us so that we can receive it just in time for production? In inventory, inventory is one of the 7 deadly sins because it's a waste, okay? In inventory, there can be a lot of problems that are hidden. You see, when you buy material and you store it, your cash is tied up in those goods, which then means that you've got net working capital that's tied up and it's sitting in your warehouse. And everybody who runs a business, owns a business, knows that cash is king. You need to have a flow of cash. You need to have cash in the bank. So you want to keep your inventory to a minimum, okay? So these guys need to manage it. Production then says, this is the plan based on the orders we have. They go and pull stock from inventory and they start producing. And once it produces, they move it to the warehouse and distribution then sends it to the customer. So if we look at this flow, we will notice that there's a physical flow of goods that happens. There should be a systematic flow of goods that happens right through. If production wants to know how many wheels do I have, they got to go look on the system and they check with inventory. Good enough, let's produce. If logistics wants to know how much of stock is being made this week, because we need to get it out to the distribution center. They can also go onto the system and see. Each of these areas have a budget, so they need to work within the minimum cost. It is extremely important for that to happen. Okay? All right. So I've showed you the different areas in there. Actually, I want to say one more thing. Logistics never used to be part of supply chain before. So production would stop here. And back in the day, we used to have something called a hole in the wall, right? When I worked at Coca-Cola, your production would produce and everything would go hole in the wall into the warehouse. Now, the moment your goods left and it went into the hole in the wall, you wiped your hands of everything. Your job was done and it stopped there. And once it reached the other side of the wall, the warehousing and distribution took over and you didn't even know what happened with it. Now, with logistics sitting in the whole supply chain picture, we are able to see what's going out, when it's going out, how do we produce, when do we produce. There's so much of transparency, and we all actually become one family working toward the same goal to add value to the customer. Okay. In each of those areas, we've got objectives. Now, the good thing about these objectives is they're the same. Quality, speed, dependability, flexibility, cost, and sustainability. Whether you're in logistics, whether you're in production, whether you're in procurement, whether you're in inventory, the objectives should be the same. At the beginning, I said, if the exec team says that we want to hit 99% quality, the how part of it, the middle management, should have a look to see what's the quality in production, what's the quality measure in procurement, what's the quality measure in inventory, are we meeting it? Who's holding us back to get to the 99%? Because we have a view now. Your speed is more your throughput and getting it to the customer on time. Your dependability is getting it to the customer in full, on time, no errors. Flexibility. How flexible are we as a business? Are we able to change the plan? Are we able to? So if a customer says, I've sold out on the chocolate and we thought it was going to last for the month, it's actually just 2 weeks. We need you to increase our production order by 20%. Are you flexible enough to do that? That's what it's about. Cost, and of course, sustainability, which is around the social responsibility and the environmental impact. Businesses these days will not do business with you if you don't have an environment program and a corporate social responsibility program that is going. That's the global standard right now. So in each of these areas, these are the supply chain objectives that we need to adhere to. These objectives are measured, they monitored, and they trended so that we can grow and we can actually gain market share and bring in profit as well. Okay. All right. I said supply chain is important to every business. Now, not so long ago, competition has been between businesses. So businesses compete to gain market share. Businesses compete to make more money, profit. And there's always been competition. So inside of your marketplace, you've got customers and their customers. You've got suppliers and their suppliers. You've got you, your business, and you've got your competition. And everybody inside of this is fighting all of the time to gain more, to make more profit, okay? Recently, ladies and gentlemen, the competition is not between businesses. The competition is between supply chains. It doesn't matter about the business. You see, if you can get your supply chain to be streamlined, if you can get your supply chain to be lean, if you can keep the costs low and you can keep the value high, you are going to have the competitive advantage. That's a given. Okay. So why is supply chain important? Is because we want to give the customer what they want, when they want, how they want it, where they want it at the right price, and they want more. That's the value. It's important because it's in supply chain where your costs are big and they can be reduced. You can reduce costs in procurement, you can reduce costs in production and logistics. You can free up your cash by buying better. You can streamline your production and make profit. There's partnerships that can form with your suppliers, with your customers. Businesses that I've come from where your suppliers and your customers are actually pulled into the supply chain. Now, the thing about partnerships is that they share the risk with you. They celebrate the wins with you. As you grow, they grow. So they're in it for the long run. Demand and supply balance. This is quite important. When there's a demand in the market, businesses are rushing to meet that demand. They want to be able to supply first. In order to supply first, all of those supply chain objectives I spoke about need to be met. Okay. Transparency, I think we covered that. And then, of course, just working together, not in silos. Okay. So that's the first part about what supply chain is. Let's go quickly into some of the trends that are happening. Now, in the last 4 years, we, not just as a country, but I think as planet Earth, have gone through so many things. We've had a major pandemic. We've had wars, the Russian-Ukraine wars. We still got some wars going on right now. And this has caused supply chain to take a step back and say, how resilient are we? Can we get through these things? We didn't see them coming, but did we fall down? Did we manage to get up again? What measures do we have in place for these unexpected disruptions? So the trends right now, the big ones, and I'm sure you guys are so familiar with it, is all of your artificial intelligence. It's your robotics. It's all of your digital supply chain. It's your e-commerce. It's around your smart logistics, your Internet of Things. All of these things are trending. All of these things are helping businesses to sharpen the supply chain skills and becoming more resilient because the competition is between the supply chains. So these are the big trends. I think the biggest one is your e-commerce, because out of that is coming your e-procurement. If we take, for example, Take-A-Lot, you go in and you can see online what stock is on hand. You can see online as the stock is diminishing and people are purchasing. You can see the pricing right then. You can make a purchase just like that. You can see when the delivery is coming to you, by when and where it's coming from. That's amazing because it's streamlining the supply chain and it's really helping you to do your business in real time. Okay. Then we've got things like your smart logistics. You can track your goods, whether it's on a ship, whether it's in the air, or wherever it is. You are able to track your goods. You are able to go and do research on it. You are able to really do your own shopping and actually work with the supply chain itself. I want you for a second just to think about when we place orders on Take-A-Lot, for example, and it's a sale, and there's millions of people around the country shopping for the same thing. Just think about what goes on behind the scenes. As you are pulling the goods and you're taking it, it's diminishing. It was 100, everybody's buying, now it's gone down to 2. What is happening to the supply chain in the background? Okay. They need to place more orders with their manufacturers. The manufacturers need to start manufacturing. Procurement needs to start buying raw material. Logistics need to be ready to start moving things. There's a lot that goes on there. And it's because 24/7, whilst we are asleep, people on the north are shopping. Okay. So these are some of your trends. Globalization is massive, absolutely massive. So we're not in a pond anymore. Now we're swimming in the big sea. You don't have to buy from your 6 suppliers that are sitting here around the corner. You can shop anywhere in the world and at the right price, your quality, you can look at whatever other value adds are coming with it. There's a number of things. Now, as businesses in South Africa, we also compete globally. So yes, we buy raw materials. We import it from across the world because we look at good price. We look at leveraging our volume. We look at a whole different number of things, right? But we also export quite a bit. And in order to export, there's a whole host of things supply chain needs to make sure. What's our environmental stance? What's our social responsibility stance? Do we understand all of the customs and the laws and the currency? When do we buy? When do we sell? Are we following the indices, the market indices, to see which is the best time? All of this needs to be taken into consideration so that our supply chain is highly effective. We're not just efficient, we want to be effective because we need the competitive advantage. Okay. Let's move into the opportunities and the challenges. Now, before we talk about the opportunities and challenges for each one of us in supply chain, I want to talk about the challenges that supply chain faces. I said in the last 4 years, the whole world has turned topsy-turvy. So many things have happened, and supply chains have become stronger. A lot of companies, if we take, for example, Checkers and what they did with their 60/60, they grew phenomenally in a time when there was no movement in the world because they developed the delivery app. They've created to add that value to the customers, delivery on time, and it was within the 60 minutes. Just think about the supply chain behind the scenes, how these guys needed to pack, how they went back to the Tiger brands and the Unilevers, placing their customer orders on them because it was growing so quickly, and how they needed to produce. So all of that showed us that it can be done. And the supply chain was streamlined right across. I mean, it's still working right now, and it's still working well. So what are some of the challenges that supply chains face, and how do we overcome them? In the last 4 years, and maybe years before that as well, there's been material shortage around the world in a lot of things. I came from the pharmaceutical industry, and in a lot of cases, you would find that certain materials are scarce, and you've got just one source, or you need to go and develop something close enough to use as well. So that's a huge challenge because when something is scarce and there's a demand for it, the price shoots up. Okay, and this is going now. It's going to cause a problem because you're incurring costs. Absolutely. We've also had increasing freight price. So if you check on Bloomberg or any of those tools, and you actually go and see how freight pricing has increased, shipping, road transport, all of those things, it's frightening. And it's for different reasons, right? Which we know about, and it's market index related. The big challenge that supply chains also find is their forecasting. So there's a lot of businesses that battle to get the forecasting right. And if you go into businesses and you ask them, why are we late? What is the problem? And they'll tell you, poor planning, poor planning, poor planning. But it's your sales forecast that needs to be translated into your demand forecast and the rest of it, okay? It becomes difficult because Customers are changing their minds all of the time. Suppliers are not able to deliver on time. There's issues in production, and these are some of the challenges that we face. There's a whole host here. Your port congestion that we face. Inflation is a big one. For infrastructure, we're not set up to do the things that the business is growing so fast, but we're not set up. And then, of course, you've got all of your barriers that come from working globally. So, I mean, there's been instances where production happens in a foreign country, maybe somewhere in Africa. We produce there, but we can't pull the money out from there because it needs to stay in the country because of certain laws. So there's a number of challenges that supply chain managers face on a day-to-day basis. If we break that down a little bit further, the capacity within your operation areas, the capacity within your engineering areas, which are part of supply chain, the availability of your resources, you find one person doing the planning, procuring, and all of it. Getting the right talents, the specialists in the roles is also a huge challenge because we don't have the people there. And because supply chain management, especially in our country, is still growing and developing, the capacity, the resource availability, the talent is a challenge. It's a major challenge in a lot of businesses. We've got the complexity of competing on a global stance as well. We've got the complexity of customers wanting certain things that we are not equipped as a business to deliver. And if we don't deliver, they will go elsewhere. As consumers, we do the same thing. We have the challenge of the natural disasters that we see it all around. There's compliance issues, there's pricing issues that we can't really pass onto our customers. There's a whole lot of challenges that are everywhere that you look, okay? So there are ways to overcome these challenges, and that's by getting your supply chain to be resilient. You need to identify your current status. You need to work around how do we get to the design phase that we want to be in? Do we have an ERP system? What reporting tools do we have? Can we go back in history and see what we did well, or where can we improve? Should we be benchmarking with other industries to see what they're doing? There's a huge focus on automation and lean management. Sourcing strategies. We're able to source from anywhere in the world. Are we looking into it? How do we work with freight forwarders instead of trying to do it ourselves? Do we look at outsourcing, for example? All of this helps businesses to increase in cash, become resilient, and actually take on the market and become the leaders. Okay. So these are some of the software tools. There has to be an integration of the system, warehouse management, material resource, and your whole ERP system needs to work together so we have that transparency and we are able to see what we're doing at what cost and where's our goods as well. And the last one is where we're going to finish up before we stop for questions. You and I can change the world as supply chain experts, as supply chain specialists, okay? Being in supply chain for all the years that I've been in, when you look at that mountain and you think, I do not know how we're going to do this. The customer is difficult. We need to deliver and we don't know how we're going to do it. And somehow you come together and it actually gets done. The things that you think are so impossible actually does get done. And that's where the competition is. So you want to be in a supply chain environment where nothing seems impossible and we can actually jump in and be resilient and be able to think outside the box to deliver. So here's some of your industries. I put down the industries because for people that are looking to go into supply chain, I want to tell you, and I'm going to share that in the last 2 minutes, about how amazing my journey has been. But the industries that you can work for are FMCG. You can work through your automotive industries, your retail industries. If you look at some of the guys here, your pharmaceutical industries, your banking industries, all of these industries, energy, oil, gas, consulting, all of them need supply chain. They have supply chains. They need supply chain experts, specialists, and management of it. And if we go back and we look at the roles inside of supply chain, guys, in your raw materials, in your inventory managers, data analysts, IT specialists. If you go into your manufacturing, roles like production managers, operation managers, supply chain managers, planners, procurement, logistics, distribution, transporters. There are customer managers. There are so many different roles inside of supply chain that in my years of experience, you can start off by working in a laboratory and you can grow to head up procurement for multinational. It's by going through the supply chain, gaining the experience that you need, and moving from there on. Okay. So before we go into the Q&A, I just want to give you a history of where I started and where I am now. I have a food science background. I have a food science background, and I went into business ecom, and then I did a master's MBA. But starting off in food science, working in a laboratory, working in quality, wanting to know more, moving through production and the rest of supply chain, ended up looking after suppliers, and then moving into procurement, global procurement, heading up procurement, and moving into consulting afterwards, sharing that knowledge has been my trip throughout supply chain. The number of organizations like Unilever, Coca-Cola, Diageo, Tiger Brands, Nampak are some of the businesses I worked in, different supply chains. So dynamic, so fulfilling, and the growth is incredible. You will never have a dull moment. You will just be learning, growing, because in that marketplace that I spoke about, where you got suppliers and competitors and customers, everybody wants new things. Customers want new things all the time. You got to continuously be thinking outside the box. And there's so many lean tools. There's so many continuous improvement tools. There's so many things that you work on. And with supply chain now, it's endless. I'm going to stop there, guys. And I want to go back. I'm going to stop sharing. And there we go. I want to go back to some of the questions that you guys might have for me. Okay, so I'm seeing the first question here. Lack of ethical and moral values. Lack of ethical and moral values happens to dent the images of those who can change the universe. In a nutshell, some personnel who happen to do good happen to be victimized. Yes, that is true. Now, the ethical and moral values is part of the business culture. And that's the bottom line. So remember when I spoke about the strategic component of businesses, part of their vision and part of their mission is around ethics. It's around morals. So for me, heading up procurement, you're faced with a lot of ethical and moral values. And policies and procedures and the business culture is what governs professionals to make sure that they are fulfilling those policies and are governed by those procedures. So yes, personnel who happen to do good happen to be victimized in certain cases, but at the end of the day, it's aligning your values to that the business values and understanding what those business values are. ethics, morals, social responsibility, all of that should be in there. How much of supply chain do you reckon will be automated by 2030? A lot of it. So if I go back to 2006 or so, we had robots in the Unilever plants, and these robots would do the packing. And it was so phenomenal to actually see what, how they did it. Fast forward to where we are now, there's a lot of automation that's going on. There's a lot of artificial intelligence, blockchain, all those kind of things. And your industrial revolution is telling us that by 2030, there's going to be a lot more of automation. I think we'd have robots in a lot of the factories doing a lot more than just packing. And they'd be equipped to possibly make decisions as well. Okay, so that's the questions. I just want to see if there's anything else. Okay, lots of things in the chat. Let me just look. Looking at your slide, flexibility would also be the financial draining factor. How well would you manage the cost benefit thereof? So flexibility, this is what we say in supply chain. Do not cut off your nose to spite your face. So understand what your business principles are, okay? Your capacity for your machine would be to produce whatever it might be. Flexibility to change the plan or adapt the plan, you should have a percentage of what you would do. So if I had to give you an example, and if Woolworths came to us, we're producing chocolate, if Woolworths came to us and said, and this is a live example, we asked you for 3,000 units of the Bestie bars, and that was supposed to be for 3 months. We kind of sold all of it in the first month. It's just flying. Are you able to increase that, please? Triple it. And we are saying, hang in, we can't give you all of that. We can split it. We're flexible enough to split it over the next couple of months. And this is what it's going to look like, because we got to go back to suppliers, and they still need to produce cotton and flexibles. We still need to make chocolate. So flexibility, you will calculate that as to how far you go. The problem with saying no to flexibility is that someone else is waiting, and you could potentially lose a big customer. Can I study at Regents Supply Chain if I have a postgraduate in project management? I think you would be able to. I don't think why not. Project management is a little bit focused on project. There's a little bit of supply chain management in there. And project management forms a module in the supply chain space as well. What is the advantage of supply chain management in a production field, packaging supervisor? Okay, so if you want to study supply chain management and you don't want to be a production or packaging supervisor for the next 10 years, and you actually want to grow, maybe move into raw materials, maybe move into planning, maybe move into procurement, then that's the first way to open that door, is to get that opportunity and to grow from there. You've got the qualification, it's about getting the exposure, and it's about moving. Okay, so I've got some hands that are raised. Let me just see how I do this. I kind of lost the raised hands now. Oh, there we go. There we go. Grant?
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. How are you?
All right. Thanks. And you?
Well, thank you.
Good. One thing I noticed, and that is in your presentation, and I felt that it was very important to introduce in your supply chain planning, is your sales and operations planning. It's becoming a very integral part within the supply chain circle as well. And I think it's very important to, elaborate and to make a subject or a thing out of it, that your sales and your S&OP becomes a integral part inside of it.
Agreed. Thank you for that, Grant. Absolutely. Your sales and operations planning is the one place where everybody's in the same room. And once it's agreed and it goes up to the exec team, they sign it off, and we actually all know where we stand for that period of time. So S&OP is very, very, very important because your demand plan gets spoken about, your procurement plan happens in there, all of the risks are identified, and whatever countermeasures needs to come into place, decisions are made at that high level as well. Thanks for that, Grant.
I do feel that it's very important, because you'll go through your demand planning, supply planning, and then right up to executive, where they actually sign off for the next 3 or 5 years, whatever you need to supply or whatever needs to be done in that. And, I'd go so far as actually to say that S&OP is probably the next MBA.
Agreed, agreed. Lots of people don't like it in their businesses, but it's a very important area. Thank you. Okay. Google, there we go. Google, you can just unmute yourself. I've allowed the mic. Okay, whilst we're waiting for Google, let me just see if I can ask a few more questions. With regards to e-commerce, how do we ensure that those companies in the global space meet our country's SARS tax obligations? Okay, so those are laws and regulations. Those are legal things that just come into play. And when we are working, whether it's e-commerce or whether it's a straightforward procuring or selling or whatever it is, the SARS tax obligations and that whole pack that goes with how we do business forms part of it. You'd be found out quite quickly if it doesn't go in that fashion. So I think it's going the legal route, just making sure that we do what we're supposed to do from a business perspective. Yeah. Okay, share the presentation. I can do that. How effective will SEM come in handy as a logistics analyst? Okay, logistics, made up of distribution and warehousing, is the biggest spend in supply chain management. It is the biggest spend. Just think about your shipping, your pipeline, your road transportation. All of it costs money. And there's a huge focus now on logistics. I believe supply chain management is massive. There's a lot of room to grow in the logistics space. What you'll also find is that a lot of companies are putting it together in a package. I mean, in the last role where I served, I was procurement and logistics head. So procurement and logistics fell under me, or planning and procurement. So they try to do that. I think there's a big scope there for you. Okay. Can supply chain management be used in waste management? Absolutely. Waste is a key in lean manufacturing and the removal of waste. So waste as in physical waste and waste as in intellect waste or time wasting, all of that, your supply chain management can measure, can monitor, can look at how we get rid of it. Companies would look at things like what's it called? Waste to landfill, how we measure it, how do we dispose of it? Because disposal costs are very high, and disposal costs, your customers don't pay for that. So it's non-value adding. We need to look at how we work around it. Okay, someone else has got their hand up. Gabriella. You can just unmute yourself and talk. Nope. Gugu, are you still with us? Do you still have a question? Okay, then, guys, I think I've answered all the questions that are here. All right, let me just look on the Q&A. Some in the chats, there's some in the Q&A. Natasha, I work in supply chain, logistics for medical. Okay, logistics seem to overlook or disregard the specific area. It's not a monetary business or an income-producing market. I actually do think that it's growing quite a bit. So your non-profit organizations, your NGOs, there's quite a bit of supply chain that's happening there in the health sector. Because as the funding is coming in globally, they want to actually see how your supply chain is managed so that the monies are used, they're adding value and they're used accordingly. So I do see that growing. There's a couple of businesses that I've done work with, and what you'll find is that the management of the distribution, the trucks, the logistics, movement of the goods, from a health perspective, like the vaccines and things like that, how is that managed through the supply chain as well? So is it being produced locally? How's it getting distributed? How's the inventory working because of the funding that's coming through? That's some of the requests, Natasha, that I have seen. So yes, but I do agree. When we think supply chain, we think of production and manufacturing. We don't really look at all the other areas, but I believe it's starting to grow. How do we create more awareness in the humanitarian causes? Let's think. How would we create more awareness? I think we'd have to get through or past that whole thought around supply chain just being for manufacturing and actually introduce it in the service area. Because wherever there's a business, there's operations. And for the fact that there's operations, it's part of a supply chain. And managing those relationships and managing those processes, even creating those processes and improving those processes right through from receiving to distribution is supply chain. I think we're just not calling it that. And, probably having to break down those processes and get them into place. There's a lot of people who've got the exposure or got the, let's say, the background or the qualification and they want to apply it. Then those are nice areas to do it in because they haven't done it before. Okay, service industries. All right, David, I had basically 45 minutes to pull everything together. I do teach or lecture on supply chain in the service industries. It is huge. There's a huge supply chain component in the service industries, and it's growing phenomenally as well. Okay, how do you think moving towards a circular economy would impact supply chain management, the cost and viability? All right. I think I just want to understand there, Julie. I just need to understand a little bit more of what you're trying to say. If you want to just put your hand up and I can unmute you, maybe you can ask the question. There we go. There we go. Hello, Julie. Just unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay, perfect. In terms of the circular economy, it's just at the moment it's a linear process. So you after your distribution, you pretty much are done and dusted with your supply chain management and you've finished with your product delivery. But with the circular economy, the idea is that you would have to have the means of being able to for instance, take used packaging or old products back into your supply chain and move it all the way back into your production or manufacturing. And so I'm just keen to, like, how viable, how much would it impact the costs and the viability of your business to actually have a circular flow with your packaging coming back? Would it actually be a net benefit, or would it actually just end up costing you more? Obviously, in terms of sustainability, it's necessary to not waste resources. But yeah, in terms of costs, how would that drive up costs, and how would it impact demand? And yeah, that makes sense.
So absolutely. So that's reverse logistics. So in terms of that, there's your reverse logistics is actually built into your logistics, which if you come all the way up. Okay, I'm just gonna mute you there. Sorry. There we go. All right. And basically, what would happen is you'd have to plan your transportation. So let's say, for example, I mean, if I take Nampak, for example, we'd be delivering, let's say, cottons or whatever it is to us, to Tiger Brands or wherever. And when we deliver, we may have 2 or 3 deliveries in that area. Now that truck cannot come back empty. So it would be very good for us to pick up the returns, pick up the divider boards, pick up whatever it is, and bring it back with us, and you using it on that basis. So you are building that cost into that transport cost, because you don't want a truck to return empty. And that's where your reverse logistics would kick in. So that might be one example. I think it's mostly in the logistics part of the supply chain management. A lot of companies are doing that. They're building it in terms of pickups, and they're making sure that they're not driving empty. So that happens there. There's also the different areas where there's a collection point that also happens, where let's say, for example, if we are Consol and our big customer is ABI or Coca-Cola, we deliver there. We try to keep that distribution center close. So whatever the returns are is in that place, and it just allows for us to leverage off it and then move it across. So there's different ways to actually manage those costs. Okay. Boycotts have great effect on supply chains. Oh, definitely. So all of your strikes, all of your union issues, all of those things have an effect on supply chain. And supply chains have to somehow go around it and manage it. So there are areas where it can be very dangerous. And these are the unplanned stuff that happens, right? These are the unplanned stuff that happens, and then you've got downtime, and then you can't deliver, and it has that knock-on effect. And of course, you're going to have to bring in overtime and whatever else. So those are some of the effects that gets put onto supply chain. Okay, I'm trying to see if there's anything else, guys. Okay, thank you, Toby. Thank you, guys. How to balance CSR and economic performance, specifically adopting CSR with its multidimensional aspect, is costly. Okay, I think that's a question, or that's a thing that all businesses are trying to manage right now with what's happening in the consumer space, as well as what's happening in terms of the economic space. Yeah, that's a difficult question. I don't know if you want to, I mean, just you want to add anything on there. I'm happy to, if you bring it into perspective, I can answer. Just keep your hand up and I can do that. Let's lower all these other hands quickly. There we go. There we go. I can hear you if you just unmute yourself.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you very much for the opportunity for questions. So, adopting corporate social responsibility, as I said, in its multi-dimension is costly. So here, are we going to focus on sustainable procurement, or in terms of environment, or in terms of governance, or economic side? Because adopting the holistic approach of corporate social responsibility nowadays, it's very, very difficult, especially when you look at the criticism from literature and from the organization that it's affect the economy of the organization in terms of adopting any corporate social responsibility model. Thank you.
So most businesses now look at a triple bottom line. And your triple bottom line is basically saying, I measure my profit based on finances, the economic portion of it. So it's the people, the planet, and the profit. So I measure my performance on the profit, so how I'm doing financially. I measure my performance, or I am measured on performance by the people, which is the corporate, the social responsibility, and what we do for the communities and societies, including our employees. And then, of course, it's the planet, which is the environmental aspect. The thing now with the sustainability program, all of that is actually brought in. So a lot of global businesses will not do work with businesses or companies that don't come with the full package. And a good example I can give you is in a procurement space, my category managers would, on when they're running tenders or RFPs, RFQs, they would have to make sure that the company that we want to do business with, in terms of sourcing, need to be financially stable. They must have an environmental program that they're running with, and they must have a social responsibility program that they're running with as well. And then the rest of the criteria, like the triple B, E, and developing of suppliers and all of that, sits inside of there. So I think it's a work in progress. Yes, you need to have the money to run with it, but it can be done in small scales to show that you are moving in that direction. And that's just the way the world is going right now. So yeah. Okay, Celeste, you don't perhaps lecture supply chain at Regent. I absolutely do. Across the whole supply chain, I do. All of it, actually. Another question. After your bachelor's degree, did you continue to do honors? If so, what did you do? And if not, and you decided to work, what was your entry-level job? Okay, is this a question for me? For me personally, I'm assuming. All right, I'll answer it like it is. So yes, bachelor's degree. I think that the way it goes now is you need to do your honors and then you can do your master's. Entry-level job, if you're asking for me personally, like I said, I've got a microbiology background. So I started with Coca-Cola in the laboratory, doing all of the microanalysis, moved into building their packaging lab, and decided I don't want to be trapped in the lab anymore, and I actually want to go into business, and then moved into the BComs and the MBAs and the likes. So yeah, that's where that is. Grant, I'm not sure if that's an old hand. Or is that a new hand?
It's not, it's a new hand. What I wanted to ask Annette is, you talk about sustainability from an environmental point of view and that, but we must also look at from a sustainability of the actual business itself, its sustainability to carry on and grow in the future as well. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So the way they break that down is your triple bottom line. So that's your profits, that's the financial aspect of the business. And then, of course, like I said, it's your planets and it's your people. So those are the three that come together. And in most cases, to do business with other businesses, to be able to supply those services and products, that's what they will ask you for it in that package. So it's no more just about how financially stable you are. We also want to know how are you impacting the environment, and what are you doing for your employees and your community, and. Well, that's how the big corporates are working these days. Grant, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. I just, is there by any chance you guys can do an honors degree in supply chain management or something like that? Not just a general honors degree.
Okay, I think you'd have to take that up with with Regent. Just find out what they do offer and what else they do. I lecture for them, and my area is in supply chain management. All right, guys. I'm not sure if there's any more questions, if there's anything else, because I don't want to take any more time, Tabi. Okay, that should be the last question that we'll. Oh, sorry. Tabi, I was trying to allow you to speak, and now you're gone. Okay. All right. Gone. Okay, guys, I really hope that you enjoyed the session. I absolutely did. Like I said, I'm very passionate about supply chain. I absolutely loved all of the years that I spent in there. You know, you sometimes feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall. At other times, you are celebrating because you've done it. And through the different areas, this is the amazing part. It's supply chain is not just, you won't just have a job. It's a full-on career. You can start as a planner and you can work your way through procurement, through supply planning, demand planning, wherever it is. And there's just so much to do and so much to grow and so much to learn. It's continuously changing. And there's such a good, amazing global aspect about it as well. Thank you, everybody, for all the kind words. And I hope you have received quite a bit. It is very informative. Like I said, I do lecture for Regent. Have a lovely, lovely evening. I think our powers come back on, so I'm not in the dark anymore. And all the best with everything that you are currently doing and you are moving into. Have a fantastic evening. Bye, everyone. So let me just, you can unmute yourself, so if you want to speak.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
Oh, just before you go, how are you gonna share the slides that you just showed us before?
So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna send it to Regent, and then they put it on, because if I can put it on, yeah, I will. If I don't know how, I'll just share it with them and they'll go back and put it in. Is that okay?
Oh, then they will send it to us.
Yeah, they'd probably be able to go back into this call and put it in there.
Okay, cool. Thanks, man.
You're welcome. There we go. Mohammed, just unmute yourself and you can speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I think the best way, I think if you're having an attendance register, it will be much easier for region to send to us.
I think if the call's recorded and we can go back and put it on here, I'm not sure. I will find out.
All
I
right.
will find out. Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, I think we're done. Thank you so much, Sal. Thanks for the insights. And thank you everyone for joining. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.